Commerce in Houston, which has been an enormous success. It is hugely successful. And under her leadership, a very dynamic and active group. Constance is also leading the charge on French Tech Houston. And so today we want to let the world know just how many wonderful, exciting activities we have going on in Houston and Austin, and the very dynamic French entrepreneurs who are selecting Texas, and why Texas, and why Houston, and why Austin. So with that, Constance.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Liz, for the introduction. And let me start by saying that Houston and Austin are really neighbors. I think it's like a 2 hours drive to go from one town to another. They are very different on many aspects, but the fact that they are so close, it's super interesting, because for a startup, you have two very big towns with so much potential. So this is really exciting to be either in Houston or Austin. So let me tell you a few words about Houston. My goal today is to show you the network that we have in Houston, the opportunities, and how this town is changing very fast. Okay, so I'd like to start by this picture, because you can see these two Frenchmen. It was in 1920, and there were two French entrepreneurs, and they opened an office in Houston in the 1940s. And today it's the largest employers in Houston. The name is Schlumberger. It's a technology company. So I just wanted to show you that the connection between France and Houston dates back from a long time ago, and France has strong connection. The second picture I'd like to share when I talk about Houston is this one of Kennedy presenting the Moonshot project. And I think it stayed in the mindset of Houston. They love big projects and love innovation. The last one about the cultural mindset of the town is the one of the mayor of Houston. He made a very strong commitment to develop the innovation scene of Houston, not only with the big, large companies investing in large projects, but also building an ecosystem with early stage startups. So here is our group of French Tech Houston. We have people that are working in different industries. There's the energy industry, IoT, NASA, and people that are working in different type of community to support startups. So this group of very committed people are more than happy to welcome entrepreneurial projects. I like this map because it shows you that there is a strong French presence in Texas. So if you come to see us, you will not be alone. We have a very big community there. And you can see this is in Houston, both American and French companies that are involved in our network. So Liz, that was the map I was talking about. For Parisian, you can see that Paris is very small compared to Houston. Just to give you an idea of the size of Houston, it's a very big town. It's the fourth largest city in the US. From an economical point of view, what is really interesting is in Houston, you have so many Fortune 500 headquarters. And these big companies are potential clients for startups. And one of the reasons why startups are contacting us is because they are looking for new clients. And these large companies are potential clients for our French startups. And what is as well really interesting is because Houston does not have the same exposure as California or New York. The competition is less intense, and these big companies are more accessible, maybe in Houston than in another town. Mm-hmm. Here are the key industries in Houston. So Houston is very well known for the energy, but I would like to highlight the fact that today Houston is about the energy transition. Texas has become #1 on solar and wind energy. So all the innovation regarding the energy transition are more than welcome. And I know we have fantastic startups in France working on that. We have as well the medical. I will say a few words about that in a few seconds. The industrial base is as well super interesting for startups, both logistic and manufacturing. We have many factories that need to enter the digital world. And we have some startups working in IoT in Houston, providing their innovative solution to the big factories that are in the area. And the last aspect is more well known is of course the NASA. This is an overview of Houston. So you can see it's a very green city. What I wanted to showcase with this picture is you can see like two different towns. The first town with the big buildings in front, it's only hospitals. This is a Texas Medical Center. It is one of the biggest in the world. You have more than 40 hospitals together. And it's super interesting for our medtech companies. You have on the same so many patients, so many doctors. You have all your clients that are in the same location, and the number of incubators among those hospitals is growing. The number of dollars invested in startups growing as well. So there are really big opportunities for our French startup in the medical area. So here, some key numbers about the medical center. They call themselves like a marketplace to give you an idea of how many patients and doctors there are. There is a number that I found crazy. That there is a surgery that is starting every 2 minutes in the Texas Medical Center. So this shows you only the incubators that are in the Texas Medical Center. So you have a Johnson & Johnson, who was an incubator. You have an AT&T Foundry. So really, if you have a medtech company, I think there's plenty of opportunities in Houston. The last aspect of my presentation, as I was mentioning at the beginning, Houston is changing really fast. And I want to show you that. We had this history of having innovation through large companies with the NASA and big energy companies. But today there is really an ecosystem of startups that is growing, and the town is investing for that. This is the flagship of Houston, the Iron. It will open in a few months. And it will host all the incubators that are opening in Houston right now. This you can see on this graph the number of VC accelerators, co-working space that has been growing in the last few years. And I have to say that Houston for that is quite attractive, and I think that's something that we share with Austin. The fact that housing is affordable, the wages are reasonable. The cost of life is so good and so comfortable that we see today companies from California moving to Texas, and I think this graph really showcases that. So this is an example as well of accelerators that came to Houston in the, I think that's 2 last years. So some of them are really famous, like Plug and Play, Johnson & Johnson, Mass Challenge. So it's just to show you that the ecosystem is becoming really strong. The big question is always how to find the funds. Honestly, today, when you compare the funding capacity in Houston compared to New York or California, we're still way behind. But what is interesting is to see the trend, and the trend is really growing really fast. And that's it for Houston. So Liz, I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation about Austin.
All right, here comes Austin. Let's see, we're gonna stop that one, I guess. And then I will move over to Austin. You know, I used to live in Houston before I moved to Austin. So I'm actually quite a big fan of Houston. There's some wonderful things, benefits to that. How's that screen looking? Can you see it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. A little different approach in talking about Austin. Some of you may know Austin from the news of South by Southwest, or Live Music Capital of the World. In the past 5 years, I've seen a marked change in Austin's recognition in France. For years, though this is changing, Austin was very different. It was like a little blue left of center bubble within Texas, and it was known for that. It's not only the live music capital of the world, it's also the capital of Texas. Austin has always had this hippie musician type vibe. So,
Yeah.
and I mention that because it's important to how our ecosystem works and how it feels, and this very special collaborative spirit. Austin has this wonderful benefit of being sited quite beautifully along the Colorado River, which has become a lake. The view you see here is into downtown facing north. And if you stayed on some of these roads, you'd get straight up to Dallas, and some of them go straight, well, you'd have to head east to Houston. But this is our downtown. This is the core of where a lot of things happen. So Austin, like Constance mentioned, we are neighbors. I have another map with Houston, but you've got Austin right here, and you've got Houston down close to the coast, as she was showing. And that's going to be important when we talk about this Texas Triangle benefit on this slide. So Houston, gigantic. It is the fourth largest city in the world, and okay, I hope we're on that slide. I'll take my time. We've got some stats here about the state of Texas and Austin. Let's see. Are y'all not on that slide? Let's see.
Liz, I'm not sure we see the slides. Maybe, okay, maybe we can see. I'm turning this. Do you see the slide? I just changed the first one to the second. Do you see it?
Can you see the Austin ones now?
Yeah, now we see the map.
Let's see. There's Austin, and there's the picture of downtown. Are you seeing that? And then map of Austin. Okay, I think we're all right now. Sounds good.
Yeah, if you can just let me know the number of the slide you are on, so I can make sure we are on the correct one.
Wonderful. Okay, slide number 4. We're looking at some statistics about Austin. Does that work?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So here we get an idea of how Texas is leveraging the economic powerhouse that are the 3 major cities in Texas. We heard about Houston. You can see that down on the southeast. You can see Dallas a little bit behind the words up here, and Austin in the middle. Houston being the 4th largest city, Austin is the 11th. Yet, even though we're the 11th largest city, we have been winning awards right and left for quality of life, the dynamic ecosystem, and also just, this great collaborative spirit that's happening among all these ecosystems. And how that works is that works so well because each of those communities has a specialty they've been known for, even though we're very diversified now. Dallas, for example, long has been a telecommunications center, a Radio Shack, TI, all these companies started focused on Dallas. Dallas has a really strong, long history there. Austin started as a semiconductor entity. You may not think about that when you think about this musician, and we'll go into more of the technology side, but Austin has a very robust, strong tech community for decades in the semiconductor space. And Samsung, then no surprise, has been in Austin for a very long time. in this massive growth we've seen in Austin in the past 5 to 10 years, new airport, it's winning awards right and left. This local, again, kind of hippie vibe I mentioned is seen in our commitment to local. For example, in the airport, only local vendors, only local food vendors, local stores and artisans. It's really, we're pretty passionate about supporting our local ecosystems, not just in the tech space. Moving to the next slide. This is, hopefully you're seeing that, is the cover of Le Monde. Did a huge article on not just Austin, but Texas in general, Le Texas c'est sans cesse. And part of this different spirit for Austin and the value proposition for startups that we see and the feedback from them is this great quality of life. It's one thing you can maybe work anywhere, especially these days, but what do you do after work? How do you attract this young, vibrant population when there's so much competition for data scientists? AI is exploding. What else can you offer when they're bringing their families? What are they looking for? Well, Austin has been known for this outdoor living, and this is right in downtown Austin, this type of view. Music, again, just talking about this is really part of the ecosystem and the value proposition. Now I'm on the slide. These are some of the quotes we saw from the Le Monde article, exactly what we're talking about. When you leave work, you want to go out and enjoy life. Next slide. It's just, again, part of that green vibe that Constance mentioned about Houston. Austin, being in the central part of Texas, has many rivers running through it and all around it.
Beautiful. Next
slide is talking about that comparison like we're talking about. So our title is The West Coast, another different type of coast. And as Constance mentioned, a lot of times people think only of East and West, but this is a new type of coast. It's a very, the economy has just been growing and blowing. We're the 10th largest economy in the world if Texas were a country unto itself. And so what this slide speaks to is the fact that, sure, talent could go to those places, but your money's going to go a lot further here. It's that cost of living proposition that Constance mentioned. Next slide. Again, a view, just the music festivals right here downtown, right in Austin, all happening downtown. Okay, well now we'll get to some of those the stats, the hard numbers, but the nature, the surroundings. I hope that gives you an impression about just it's kind of that special sauce. When we have the big festivals of South by Southwest, it is all that feeling that emanates from all that natural beauty, and it's just part of the package that you sense when you're here, and that has created an energy and of attractivity for Austin. So because of that, we've won a few awards that you can see here. Named #1 Tech Town. They've counted 7,000 startups and tech companies. Venture funding hit a record high last year with a huge percentage growth over previous years, that 87%. Another value proposition is the huge number of the talent pool. The pipeline for talent right here with 25 colleges and universities, not just in Austin proper, but what we call the Austin metropolitan area, which is about 2.2 million, with Austin proper being about 975,000. It's been one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas. And at last count, there were about 100 different incubators, accelerators, and co-working spaces. I'm going to speak to one of them because it's been a magnet and it's been doing a great job at unifying the Texas great cities of Austin, Dallas, and Houston. So when we talk about universities, there's one that's of particular importance, and we'll see why in a couple of slides. So we have the flagship university for the state of Texas, and that's the University of Texas at Austin. They have a pretty bold statement, what starts here changes the world, but we will see how that might be true. In fact, the University of Texas has the oldest still active incubator in the United States. So Austin was all about making that connection between university, academic research, and technology commercialization and supporting startups for a very long time. So I've just listed here, just within the university itself, a very strong commitment for a very long time to supporting not just students, but commercializing the technology out of UT. High performance computing, HPC, is an extremely important part of the ecosystem here in Austin as well. UT, University of Texas, is home of the Texas Advanced Computer Center. And there, it's called Frontera. It's the 8th most powerful supercomputer in the world and the fastest one on a university campus. Well, what does that mean? It's a very important part of the partnership we have with Dell. Dell Computer, as we all know, international name, started right here in Austin. And the UT connection and Dell are not accidental here for slides. It's one of those great founder creation stories of Dell, that Michael Dell, literally, even though he had a strong entrepreneurial background, he was starting companies, when he was a kid. He started building the computer company there in his dorm room at UT. This is true because you run around enough people who, were on the same floor with him back then. So Michael Dell and what he's created there up in Round Rock, just north of Austin, has had a huge impact on Austin. And we really credit Michael Dell's, giving back mentality. It creates that whole cycle of giving back. The Dellionaires, as we call them, quote unquote, who were very successful at Dell, going public, going back private, they all started their own companies. They started their own successful companies, and they had great exits. They want to give back, and they become mentors. They create angel networks. And so that ecosystem, as we know now, is the essence of a successful one. That's been going on for decades, a lot of thanks to Dell. Dell Medical School down here is just one of many, and the latest and greatest commitment to philanthropy and social change in Austin and the world that Dell is making. The Dell Medical School is important to note here because the UT Austin system was like the last top tier research university in the United States without a medical school. So they decided, you know what, it was about time, we need to have one. But they decided we don't just need another medical school, we want to do something completely different. We want to reinvent, disrupt the entire healthcare system. So we can go more into that, but it's a great leveraging spot too to look at that vast medical complex in Houston. And then you have Dell Medical that's reinventing how to learn, how to even teach medicine, and how to think about a different way of delivering healthcare. So I mentioned, out of those, 1,500 accelerators and incubators, I was going to just focus on one. And that one is Capital Factory. It's in a beautiful space, downtown Austin, top floor, all glass. You have 360-degree views all around Austin. It's really a great space to work in, not these days, but that space is still there for events that are still going on in limited capacities. Also very well known because President Obama visited as part of the Jobs Creation Act a few years ago, and that created even more excitement and led to some more very interesting defense industry innovation, very disruptive ways of reinventing military technology as well, and I'll mention that. Capital Factory has about 81,000 square feet, 900 events per year, and it's also home to the Central Texas Angel Network. CTAN is known as one of the largest and most successful angel networks in the country. Capital Factory is also probably the instigating force behind really leveraging Austin, Dallas, and Houston. So Constance knows those folks. Capital Factory was off into Houston. They expanded into Dallas, realizing, sure, you can start your company here, you can expand, you can create your subsidiary and have operations in Austin. That makes sense for you. But you can also leverage the huge client bases that you have, like in Houston and Dallas with the giant industrials. And to top it all off, obviously we have some of the big tech names, but Tesla also decided that it was going to get in on the on the Austin energy, and they selected Austin for the next gigafactory for out in East Austin. So you can see that there. So that's, we've got all the, because of all that energy and excitement over this young, I keep wanting to say dynamic, but this very young, motivated, and exciting collaborative, born of this musician startup culture and a nature and outdoorsy pioneering type spirit that attracted an amazing group of young folks to work at all the companies that are coming in here. But time for question and answer. So I will quickly finish this up here with our South by Southwest. Because of all that, you saw the pictures of downtown, the nature, the river, the water. Every year before COVID time, South by Southwest was our way of presenting everything about the Austin ecosystem to the rest of the world. 26% of all the almost 500,000 attendees are from foreign countries. So it is a beautiful way to connect Austin with the world. And it's a great time where we connect with French entrepreneurs. We've been supporting Business France and La French Tech, supporting the startups that come to the trade show every year. It's been a great way for Austin to get its name known in France. And now we want to make sure Texas and all our Dallas, Austin, and Houston folks are part of those visits when we get back to having all these wonderful events during South by Southwest. So that's that. I will, let's see, I might need you to close that up, Constance. But anyway, I've got questions for you, Constance. Are you ready for some questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you as well. So
okay, well, I've been talking so much. I'd love to give you a chance. When the venture funding or the venture arm for Texas Medical Center, do you see some examples of? What kind of rounds are you seeing? What kind of numbers? Is this seed funding, Series A? Can you talk a little bit about the size of deals or size, or maybe not just that venture arm, but in the medtech space? Well, what kind of size of deals or fundings are you seeing there in Houston?
Yeah, I think we are seeing all size of deal.
Okay.
The difference, if you want to compare with Silicon Valley and what's happening today in Texas, it's more in the number of deal. I mean, there are some big, huge deal that happened in Texas, but it happened less often than it happened in California. So I think that's why overall the number are less impressive, but they are growing. But you can fund a startup from growing to becoming a large companies.
Right. And what kind of companies, not just med tech? I mean, that seems such a obvious choice for a startup given the research capabilities and clients. What are some of other type of companies that you've seen take advantage of the Houston ecosystem from France?
I mean, what is really interesting is we had many French companies coming to Texas or Houston for their energy. So it doesn't mean that the company was working in the energy, because I mean the energy is such a large industry that you can be in logistic, you can be in IoT, it covers many aspects. But today it's really changing. It's really more diverse. We were mentioning the medical because it's today a huge part of Houston. So definitely the medical, and we can see and as we are seeing today, it's the artificial intelligence for sure, and IoT. And as I was mentioning, the logistic is interesting as well. We have the port of Houston, which is I think the third port of the US. And with the port of Houston, you have so much logistic involved, and this area is really changing with the new technology. So we have some French working on the logistics that have amazing projects, managing a big warehouse with drone. It's really impressive.
That's great. Noel, I'm remembering too your map of Paris and Houston. Our French entrepreneurs here in Austin have said what they like so much about Austin, compared to Paris. And like Paris has the little villages, you stay in your own neighborhood. It's its own ecosystem and it feels homey. You never need to leave. And they get that kind of feel from Austin, they say. We were joking about kind of mobility issues, but Austin does love its bike paths. So that's, I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a similarity to a French lifestyle, even though we don't have nearly enough bakeries to walk to. I think we've got a question. Constance, can you?
Yeah, I can read it. So I'm looking to have an opportunity to work in Europe in the next 5 to 10 years before I lose too much proficiency in French. Good. After a BA in Lang. Thoughts on how to best leverage big tech experience in product towards Europe Opti. Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. First, I want to say that that's amazing that you speak French, but don't worry too much. If you're working in the tech industry, you can still work in France, and you can work in English. There are many companies today in France where you speak English when you are at work. Second, there are some very interesting visa that are opened by the French tech. They want to attract talents to France. So working in tech and wanting to go to France today, it's amazing because there are like a fast track from administrative standpoint. You can get a visa, you have some tax deduction, and that's something that is really accessible. And one of the key topic for the French tech group today is to attract talent. So if you are today in the US with a tech background, you mentioned you work with IBM and Atlassian, that's amazing. And I'm pretty sure that you can find some amazing opportunities in beautiful French startup that will be willing to hire you, and there will be no difficulties regarding visa or administrative, because it's one of the big goals of the French tech to attract talents.
Right, and that reminds me some examples of our French tech entrepreneurs here in Austin, or Austin, the medical space. In Austin, we're very proud that we had a French entrepreneur launch the U.S. subsidiary of his French company here in Austin, getting some very important venture funding. And he ended up having a 1.1 billion with a B exit here in the U.S. And his example is so extraordinary and informative for our French entrepreneurs here, because he is very helpful in showing how do you bridge that gap, keeping a team in France and keeping a team in the United States and Austin in particular. How do you keep your team cohesive? How do you keep communications open? How do you make sure everyone feels engaged and part of it, and bridge those cultural gaps? I heard an earlier session this morning about that. one of our young startups, she's in the med tech space. She's a living example of of making that work very successfully. In fact, she founded her company here in Austin out of Berkeley, one of those examples from California coming to Austin. And from Austin, though, she expanded by going into Paris. So they have their place at Station F, not these days, but she's been hiring talent in Paris, taking advantage of not just the Dell Medical School and the new ecosystems and accelerators there, but also leveraging the best and the brightest around the Paris and the very wonderful hospital and healthcare establishments there. So we're seeing some very interesting models that people are leveraging the best of both of those ecosystems. And like Constance mentioned, the different visas, the French tech communities here are not just about welcoming and supporting all the French companies here. We want to make sure everyone knows that France has changed, and there is a tremendous amount of support, very innovative, disruptive thinking about how to engage in some social change through startups. We're breaking down some barriers, very diverse teams. That's a big theme in Austin right now. How do you get diversity into the startup ecosystem and bring more attention to those wonderful startups? So we're about both of those things. France has some wonderful things to take advantage of, and you can do that while working here, and vice versa. I imagine do you see some of that as well, Constance?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think this crisis with COVID, what was I think that if we can find a silver lining to that is I think we had more reaching out to us, and they realized that a lot could be done to explore Texas digitally. We set up some meetings with potential partners, with potential clients. So what I can say is I felt that Texas looked more accessible during this time because everybody's going online. And usually when people were flying to California or New York and did not stop in Texas, now the fact that everything is digital, it was easier to add Texas in part of their business development plan. So, I mean, I would like to leverage that in the future. I think it's an opportunity for Texas to showcase what it has to offer.
No, that's a good point. I think we've gotten used to the fact that we can be effective. I think the tools have improved tremendously too during this time. That we can be effective. Aside from my own problems here with the stuff that the platforms are tremendous. I've seen that as well. In fact, it's a way. I'll mention quickly. Austin has a sister city in Angers, France, and so we have been rebooting our efforts in the IoT space with Angers and working on some really specific soft landings. Supporting not just from Angers, it's a relatively smaller town, but it's the heart of a huge electronics industry of Western France. And so making sure that our Austin, very strong manufacturing and the IoT companies here and their initiatives knew about this gateway and entryway into there. That's what I really like seeing happen. And it's a beautiful example of making a sister city relationship have some true, real economic impact on the local ecosystem here.
Great. Yeah, I think we are up to the time. Yep. I heard like a ding to tell us that it was the end. So maybe to conclude, I would let you the last words, Liz, but the only thing I wanted to say is not hesitate to reach out to us, the French Tech Houston and French Tech Austin. Liz, yep. I let you the few words, and thank you so much. No,
that's great. Same thing. Yeah, you know where to find us. We're on Facebook, French Tech Austin, French American Business Council of Austin. Reach out, leave a message. You can find me, my law firm, Grable Martin Fulton. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot we didn't cover. I'm happy to continue the conversation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.